What's up guys, Elbareth here, and welcome to my guide on Heroic Feng the Accursed. This is a ranged DPS guide. I'm going to be doing a lot of these for Ace Games, focusing on the bosses that I feel are interesting or somewhat hard for ranged DPS, as, you know, it's a different kind of guide. It's not just a straightforward, well, this is what you do, blah 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 blah, and if you're a ranged DPS, you're like, I don't care. So I'm just going to, break down with the ranged DPS abilities and what you can do to improve your DPS survivability and whatnot. Feng actually is not a really hard fight for ranged DPS, but it is a fight that a ranged DPS can wipe the raid on a few abilities. So we're going to talk about that today, and stay tuned and hopefully you learn something. So for this guide, I'm going to assume that everybody knows the normal tactics and has at least killed him on normal, and maybe has not seen him on heroic, but that's fine. This is where we're here to learn. So, on the normal modes, you cannot change the phases that he goes. So, all the phases are always going to be the same. You're going to get the same boss every single time. On heroic, this is different. You can actually change which phase you want to start out with and which phase you get last. So, there's also another phase that's added in, the Spirit of the Shield. It's a new weapon. He gets a shield, but I'll explain that later. We're going to first talk about the order of the phases that you need to do the boss in. So, because you can change the phase order, you can actually make this fight a lot easier on yourself and not being so frustrating. There is a phase, Spirit of the Staff. That phase, it's the Arcane Phase where everybody blows up. I mean, you've seen it on a normal. In Heroic, this is detrimental to the raid if somebody fucks up. So, normally every guild that I've seen, my guild personally, we've done this phase first because this has the highest margin for error. You could fuck this up and wipe, and you don't want to be doing this as the last phase because, I mean, getting to the last phase, having him almost dead, and then somebody fucking up on this phase would be so demoralizing for the raid. And it's better to get the hardest one out first, so you can focus on the easier ones and get it done quickly. So, the order I recommend is Spirit of the Staff. As soon as you get that down, it becomes substantially easier. And then you go Spirit of the Fist, which is the, he smashes his fist on the ground, a bunch of pulsing AoE, then he has the 2 lightning fists that go by. Pretty easy phase. You can negate almost all damage in that phase because of the tank abilities. You can interrupt epicenter and then bubble the next one. So, I mean, you take hardly any damage in that phase. That's a good phase for healers to regen their mana. Good phase for ranged DPS to just pew pew on the boss and get pushed to the next phase. So, the phases after that, I really recommend Spirit of the Shield, which is the new phase, which I'll explain later on, but during that phase, it's another pretty easy phase. And the last phase, it's probably, this phase has another high margin for error, but because of the damage increase you get with each phase, this phase will actually go by much faster, and this phase actually will do the most damage if you do it earlier on in the fight. So with this phase, Spirit of the Spear, it's the fire phase. You have to run the wildfire out, then you get that pulsing AoE fire, which does a hell of a lot of damage, and the more you're in that phase, the longer it goes. So really, this is the phase you want to do last, because technically you're not going to be in this phase for very long. So that's the order of the phases. I mean, you can do it whatever you like based on your comp, but I mean, this is what's worked best for us. We switched Shield and Fist before. Didn't really do much. It was just the same, but as long as you can get through Arcane Phase, basically it's a kill. I mean, the rest of the phases are not that hard as long as your tanks are on par with, interrupting epicenter and then putting a bubble down for the wildfire and stuff. So if you can get through all 4 of those phases, or the first phase at least, you're gonna have it's gonna be a good night. You're gonna have a kill. So let's focus on the phases individually, and I can give you some tips as a ranged DPS to successfully kill this boss. Alright, so the first phase we're going to go over is the Spirit of the Staff phase, which is the Arcane Phase. And this is probably the most important phase as a ranged DPS, because we actually have to pay attention here besides DPSing, because if we get Arcane Resonance at the wrong time when we're in the middle of the raid, we can wipe it. So, let's go over this and let's figure out some ways that we can avoid wiping the raid and also put out as much DPS as we can. So, the 2 abilities we're looking for again is Arcane Velocity and Arcane Resonance. You've probably experienced this either in LFR or normal modes, but in heroic modes, this is the shit. This will kill the raid. I mean, this is where you're gonna wipe. This is the hardest part of the entire fight. So, when you first pull the boss, he's going to be at 100%. Your tanks are going to pick up their shards, and then you're going to take him to the staff, which is on the left side of the platform. Once he gets that, you're going to want to have your tanks pull him to the middle of the room. Why are we pulling to the middle of the room? Because there's more room for everyone to spread out. And why do you need people spread out? Because Arcane Resonance on multiple people is no bueno for a raid, especially if you're in 25-man. So, what we need to look out for is that when you first pull him and when he first gets his spear, he's either going to cast Arcane Resonance or go right into Arcane Velocity. Now, it's going to be totally RNG whether this happens or not, so everybody needs to be aware and everybody needs to already be spread out. And it's not so spread out that everybody's so far away from the middle, but just a staggered spread. So, I mean, you can be overlapped with somebody, but as long as you can get out by taking just one tick of Arcane Resonance if it goes off. So, let's say he cast Arcane Velocity. This means that Arcane Resonance is not going to go off right away. That means everybody needs to stack on the boss, and I think at this point healers are probably using their healing cooldowns and lots of AoE heals because you won't use the bubble yet. You'll use the bubble in the next one. But with Arcane Velocity, it's a cast, so he's going to be casting it. What you need to look for is at 3 seconds till the cast is over. So about really, I wait until 2.5 till the cast is over, sometimes to 1. But at 3 seconds, it's a good point. At 3 seconds till the cast is over, you need to start thinking about getting out because Arcane Resonance is going to be hitting somebody in the raid. And the faster you are spreading out, the better it is for the whole raid because no one's going to get stacked on and no one's going to get blown up. Now, a lot of things people can do. So, as a hunter, which I am, at 2.5 seconds, I usually disengage out. And then if I get Arcane Resonance, cool, I'm out of the raid. If I don't, it's fine. I start to creep back up, DPS. And then mages, I know a lot of my mages blink through the boss at about 2.5 seconds, so you can do that. Every other range DPS, I mean, Warlocks can set up your portal. Shamans, I pop Ghost Wolf real quick, get out of that, but it's really not hard to get out. At 2.5 seconds, you have plenty of time to get out, spread out before the boss actually picks somebody for Resonance. Now, what do you do if you have Resonance? Basically, do not stack with anybody else because you'll kill them. Just make sure you're lightly spread, putting as much DPS as you on the boss, and you should be fine. Now, there's a couple ways you could stop people from stacking on them. I can put out a diagram of what my raid did, but really it's just about that person's responsibility for getting themselves out and staying spread out from other people. Now, if you're the person with the Resonance, if you get to a spot that you think is cool and it's not hitting anybody else, stay there. There is an area effect circle around you to know if you're hitting somebody or not. Stay there. Do not move. The more you move, the more chance you are of hitting somebody else. Those people need to move around you. It's their responsibility to avoid you, not your responsibility to avoid them after you have stopped. That'll be so crucial in whether or not you hit people or not. So, that Resonance is going off, and the timer for Arcane Velocity is showing it's off cooldown. Now, there could be another chance for Arcane Resonance, so do not stack up until you see the cast for Arcane Velocity. This is super important. I can't tell you how many wipes we've had because everybody thought Arcane Resonance over, we all stacked up the boss, Arcane Resonance went out, and we all wiped. You gotta watch your timers, and you cannot move early. You have to move right when you see the cast. So, Arcane Velocity's out, you pop the bubble down. Again, as soon as the cast is almost over, start to think about moving out. You cannot wait at all. You have to get the fuck out. If you wait till the cast is over, there's a chance for you to have Arcane Resonance, and then you will pop it and everybody will die. I mean, this is so crucial. This is what make or break the fight. Really, apart from that, there's nothing else to do except DPS. There is a kind of a DPS check on this to where you need to get only 3 Arcane Velocities phases during that, because any more, your healers are going to start to go and you can't really afford, they can't really afford to use that much mana during the first phase. They got to save it for the next phases. So, shoot for 3 Arcane Velocities. If you're not hitting that, I would probably not try and go farther, because you're just going to get there and probably wipe due to some mana issues or other healing issues. Try and find where you can find more DPS. Maybe having people pop more cooldowns or something. I mean, everybody should pop in their 5-minute cooldowns beginning of fight anyways, because all your trinkets are up and it'll be up for the last phase. So shoot for 3. If you cannot get 3, maybe start swapping in people who could. I really don't recommend ever pushing 4 or 5. I mean, if you're getting 5, you should probably start farming normal modes for gear, because at that point it's not going to be a kill. So as a ranged, all you got to worry about is Arcane Resonance, getting the fuck out, and then stacking up for Arcane Velocity. make sure you have all your defense cooldowns on your bar, because if you get resonance during velocity, your healers are going to have a hard time keeping you healed up. So, pop a cooldown. If you're a hunter, I wouldn't really use deterrence because this is a DPS check. You can't really afford a DPS during that, but I mean, use your health stones. If you're not using your raptor, get a spirit beast, use that heal. It's super effective. So I mean, just pay attention. You got to help out your healers as a ranged DPS and put out DPS. You can't just tunnel vision. And if you can get through this phase, the fight's pretty much over. So let's move on to the next phase. So now that we've learned how to deal with the Arcane Phase, we're going to move on to the brand new phase, which is Spirit of the Shield. Now, during this phase, there's really only two things the range need to worry about. There is a third ability he uses called Shadowburn. All that is stacking debuff on the tank, and that's mostly for healers and tanks to deal with. So the two things that range need to watch out for are Chains of Shadow and Siphoning Shield. Chains of Shadow is something a range cannot help. It's just a random damage that goes out. He just chains a random damage to a target, and then it chains off that target. Why I think range need to deal with this, personally, is because everyone has a personal healing CD or defensive cooldown they can pop. Helps out the healers just a little bit. This is really a phase where the tanks are going to get hit with a lot of damage, and anything you can do to help out your healer will help you kill this boss quickly. Now, the third ability you need to watch out for is called Siphoning Shield. This is the most important ability during this whole phase, and this is what makes or breaks the fight. So, what is Siphoning Shield? Siphoning Shield is cast by Feng every 30 seconds, in which he throws his shield at a nearby location, which causes a number of adds. It's 10 and 25 man, I'm pretty sure, and then 5 and 10 man. So 5 to 10 adds, depending on what comp you're running or what size raid you're running, and they spawn on the location of a random raid member. So what we need to do to combat this is, once he throws a shield, you stack up on the opposite side of that shield. So as far away as you can, opposite the shield. So that way they all spawn together, and then you can Gorfiend's Grasp as a DK or anything. Typhoon them, knock them back, put ice traps down, stun them, slow them, but you have to AoE them very quickly and kill them before they reach the shield. If they do reach this shield, they heal Fang for 5% of his maximum health, like each fragment does. So if all 10 hit, it's just game over. So what can we do to maximize our DPS? First of all, you should really move the tank on top of those adds once they're all in place and stunned. This way you can cleave off the boss onto the adds. You can have all your AoE spells in one single place, but as fast as you can, AoE as fast as you can, get through this phase, because sitting in this phase too long is going to put you behind on the rage timer. Now, you could use your shield. One of the tank abilities can negate this whole Siphoning Shield ability. You just drop the shield on that, but it can only be used once every time. So you'll have, most likely you'll start out with AoEing them down, and then the next Siphoning Shield that goes out, you're going to block it, and then you'll have another period of AoEing adds, and the next Siphoning Shield, and so on. During that, just ignore the adds completely. Do not pad meters, don't multi-dot, because they're going to be, they're going to go away anyways. Just focus your DPS on the boss. So the next phase you're going to be dealing with is most likely Spirit of the Fist. Again, you can choose any phase you want, but I like this phase before the last phase because this really gives your healers a chance to regen their mana. There is absolutely no damage going out during this phase to the raid, only the tanks are getting hit if you're doing the job correctly. Now, just like normal mode, you have to deal with Epicenter and Lightning Fists. Epicenter is that pulsing AoE that he casts, and it can be interrupted and bubbled, so you actually don't have to take any damage at all if you do it right. Now, as a range, there's really not anything to do but DPS as hard as you can on the boss. Sometimes, as a mage, you might have to be the one that gets the channel cast on you so they can interrupt Epicenter. If you're that person, all you need to do is stand out and make sure you get hit by Lightning Fist while you're getting channeled on. You can blink out, you can block out. I mean, it's really simple. There's nothing as a ranged DPS that is hard about this certain phase. So during this is the time to blow anything you can to push the next phase and then, survive. Alright, this is the last phase. If you've made it here, it's basically a kill. Now there's a little bit of, we just need to worry about a few things. The first thing is Wild Spark. So for this, our strategy was to bring the boss to his weapon and then stack all the range stack along the wall, and the boss pulls out to the middle of the room, facing the middle of the room. Now what this does is allows us to run the Wildfire Sparks to each side and not have to worry about it dropping on the raid. So what's happening here? All we're doing is burning the boss. This is your execute phase. This is when we're popping hero, we're hitting our potions, and we're just blowing the hell out of this boss. And this is the fight right here. This is where you're gonna make or break at the end. It's 20% left. Your enraged timer's coming up. This is where you're doing all your DPS. Now the only thing you really need to worry about is dropping sparks in the raid. Draw Flame is going to be up. All it's going to do is draw the wildfire sparks in. He's going to do that pulsing AoE. Your healers should have their cooldowns rolling. No, like, all you need to worry about this is DPS and keeping yourself alive. If you're about to die, hit your health stone, hit a defensive ability. Hunters, I wouldn't really deterrence during this because you're going to need all the DPS you can. Call for a CD, and then it's basically a kill. There's, I mean, nothing in this phase really, unless you put the wildfire spark on the raid, is going to kill you. So, I mean, DPS your heart's out, and congrats on the kill. So this has been my Fang guide. Look out for more guides. I'm doing a bunch of heroic guides. I got them in the works. Doing some more Heart of Fear guides. Heart of Fear so far is really fun for range, so look out for those. Make sure you comment, hit the like button, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.